That being said, welcome everyone. My name is Luis Chavez Mattis. I am the director of product here at MindStudio, and I'm very excited to show you all a little bit about AI agents, how to build AI agents. I'm going to show you how easy it is to build them. And we're going to build a few here live on this call here. We're going to be using our tool, MindStudio, in order to build these agents. And so I'm going to quickly share my screen and just talk a little bit about what MindStudio is. Can everybody see my screen? Let me try the hand signals. Yeah. Okay, great. Thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. Cool. So I won't spend too much time on this. The other thing is you will get a recording of this, so you don't need to build along. You don't need to take notes. I just want you to sit back, relax, and watch. You can always go back and rewatch this and try to build things for yourself. Um, a little bit about MindStudio. We are a platform that lets you build all kinds of AI agents. We have a low code, no code interface that allows you to make these AI agents. And we also just released um, a big package that you can plug into Claude Code that makes all of these tools available to, agents like Claude Code. And we make it really easy to build these AI agents. There are a bunch of templates on our site. The average agent takes anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour to build, depending on how complex the agent is. There are a bunch of interesting people that are using our product. People from large companies like TikTok and Meta, and Kellogg, Etsy, etc. One of the parts of our platform is an AI native workflow automations, basically like a node-based builder. And so people typically will compare us to other automation platforms when they see this node-based interface. The platform that we get compared to most when it comes to this aspect of MindStudio is a platform called N8N. Has anybody heard of N8N before? Okay, a couple people. Um, Basically, it's another type of automation platform. When people use N8N and use MindStudio and they make the comparison, they say N8N is more like Linux, meaning it's a little bit more technical to get started. You kind of have to go and configure each individual setting to make things work. MindStudio is more like Mac OS, meaning the interface is very easy to use. It's a lot faster to get up and running. Things are like pre-configured, and we're also the new kid on the block, so we're AI native first. What that means is that MindStudio instantly gives you access to over 200 different AI models from all of the major model providers. You do not need API keys to use these models. But if you do have a subscription to a particular provider that you really like, we make it also really easy to just link up your API key and use that provider directly. Um, there's also a bunch of different kinds of models, text models, image models, video models, audio models. We just released one that like generates music, which is pretty cool. So we can dive through the full list in a little bit. And there's a bunch of other stuff on this page, but the main thing that I want to highlight here is that you can build all kinds of AI agents. And when I talk about AI agents, I use a very broad definition. I break the word up into two parts. One, AI, it makes a call to an AI model. Two, agent, it does something on your behalf. When we use that definition, it gives us a very broad meaning and it allows us to say AI agents can be all kinds of things. And MindStudio has different types of AI agents that you can build. Some of those AI agents are going to be these AI powered web apps. These are agents that have a unique link. When you go to that link, you interface with the agent directly on the page that it exists on. There's also autonomous agents, which run on a schedule, meaning you can say things like, every day at 9 a.m., I want you to do this particular task, right? The agents that we're going to be covering mostly in this session are browser extension agents. So I don't know if you could see this, but I have a little tab on the right-hand side of my screen here, And in this, this is the MindStudio Chrome extension. And inside of this extension, I have pinned agents that I built. And so these browser extension agents let me basically click a button and then, AI magic happens. It's able to pull all of the contextual information from the web page and do something with that information. And that's kind of the agents that I'm going to show you how to build um, on this call today. You can also make agents that are triggered via email, meaning it gets a unique email address. You can forward your emails to the agent. It's able to take in all of the information from the messages, all the from lines, the subject line, all these different things, and it's able to process that using an AI model. And then for more technical folks, if you are building your own external applications, all of the agents on MindStudio can be configured as API endpoints, meaning you can use them as kind of these serverless functions and basically call the agent to do something in your application at any given time. Or they can be configured to run using webhooks. So, for example, I have an automation in Notion where when I change the status on something in Notion, it kicks off a run via webhook to my AI agent, which then takes in the information from whatever page is associated with that status and does something with that information. And then lastly, you can all of your agents can be made available to other chat clients via MCP. So if you're using Claude already, you just configure your MCP file, you can make the agent available, and now Claude has any capability that any of the agents that you make has. Um, so the other thing to note about MindStudio is that we are venture backed. We have raised $36 million to date from a bunch of interesting people, VP of Google News, the former CEO of Disney, folks from Uber and Google and Salesforce and LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as several venture capital funds. And um, if you're interested in learning more about, who's involved in MindStudio, check out our About page. And if you're interested in more in learning about all the capabilities, you can check out our homepage. But that's not why you're here, right? Like you want to build AI agents, you want to like get some value out of this, have something take home that you can actually use by the end of this session. And so what I want to show you is an example of some of the AI agents that we're going to build. So as I mentioned, we are using this browser extension type of agent. That's what we're going to be building. And the way it works is you can click on a button and it starts running the agent using the information from whatever website I'm on. So if I am on a long article like this one that talks about what a century plus a pandemic does to moviegoing and has a full analysis of theater attendance trends over the course of the last 100 years. This is a super long article. It's very dense with a lot of information. Um, Even though I might be interested in this topic, I may not have time to read the information on this page, but I have this agent called TLDR. For those of you that don't know what TLDR means, it stands for too long, didn't read. And you can click on this button, and the agent opens up in this side panel and begins running. And it's pulling in information from this web page, and it's extracting all the key learnings from the page. Now, notice I'm saying key learnings, and uh, I'm not saying summarize, right? And that's because I don't want a summary of the page. I want to understand what I need to know to actually make sense of the information. Like, what are the most important things? What are the takeaways from this particular piece of content, right? So it talks about, historical decline patterns, debunking common myths, etc. It kind of goes down the page and it's based on, all of the content that it's synthesized. And this agent also works inside of YouTube videos. So for example, here is an hour-long podcast, and I get sent podcasts all the time that all seem super interesting. And a lot of these podcasts are much longer than an hour. They could be 2 hours, they could be 3 hours. And even if I looked at these podcasts and watched at two times speed, I still would not be able to get through all of the content that I want to get through in order to learn what I need to learn. But I, again, have this TLDR agent that is able to very quickly pull the transcript of this YouTube video for me and give me all of the key takeaways from the video, the things that I absolutely need to know about. So in this case, do we need math to understand the universe? And it talks about, mathematics and scientific discovery and the famous unsolved problems. And it kind of goes through each section of that transcript and tells me what I need to know, which is very interesting. And then if there's something that I want to double click in, I can then watch that section of the video. And this agent also works inside of PDFs that are open inside of our browser. So, for example, if I'm able to highlight the text here, that means that these are all words; they're not pictures, and I can run my agent. And this is a 107-page long novel of Mice and Men. I wish I had this, in high school or whenever I had to write a book report on this. But the point is, it can take these really long documents and it can give me all of the things I need to know about this piece of text, right? And this is a very powerful agent, right? And I'm going to show you how to build it. It's even though it's extremely powerful, it's actually really easy to build. So let's actually build it together here. I'm going to show you how it works. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up MindStudio, and once you create an account by clicking on, the button at the top right that says Get Started, there's also, our account, your starter account is free, and you can make an agent on your starter account. You will get taken to this place called your workspace, where you have access to a bunch of different resources to learn. But if you click into my workspace, you'll see this button at the top right that says New Agent. And when I click on that button, I'm taken to the MindStudio IDE. Now, this is the basically the place where you will be building your AI agents, and we first see this welcome screen that kind of points you to several different resources. I'm just going to highlight a couple. One is MindStudio University. So has just packed with a bunch of video content. If you didn't get annoyed by the end of this call of me blabbing at you for 2 hours, you're going to love this because this is just a bunch of videos that I've created about building AI agents, teaching you about all sorts of different concepts involved in AI agent building. And you can kind of follow this step by step. It's kind of like a free video course that you can use to build agents. Secondly, we have our product documentation. And this is kind of all of the technical documentation around every automation block that's available, how to write prompts, like all of these different techniques, right? All aspects of the product itself. There's also boot camps and trainings. So this will take you to Luma, which is probably what you use to sign up for this boot camp, as well as our community forum, which is the place to kind of request new features, report bugs, and things like that. We don't care about any of this, so we're going to close out this tab. And you'll notice there's these kind of tabs at the top of the screen. And I'm going to click on the X button and close out of this because this is actually what's important here. What we're looking at is called the automation canvas. And this is kind of the center is kind of our main workspace area. On the left-hand side, you can kind of think of these as folders and file folders. And this shows kind of all the resources that are available in building your agent. And you can see we're inside of this main.flow workflow. The automation, all agents in a nutshell are just workflows that perform a sequential set of actions. And so all workflows for your agents start off in the exact same way. They have a start block that initializes the workflow. They have an end block that ends the workflow. And then there's kind of everything in between. And you can add new blocks by clicking on this plus button. And when you click on the plus button, you see a bunch of different, like the most common blocks front and center. But if you click on view all blocks, you can actually see that we have over 184 different blocks that all perform very specific actions within our workflows here. And that includes blocks that plug into AI models that can generate text and images and videos and music and speech. They can analyze images and videos and they can transcribe audio. Um, and then there's also blocks that allow you to get data from various places. So that could be collecting data from your user via a Google Forms style form field, or the scrape URL block that allows you to scrape the content from a web page. And your workflows don't always have to be super linear. They can actually branch into different paths depending on whether or not different conditions are met and things like that. We also have access to several different services, like your entire Google Suite can be connected into your MindStudio agents. You can, transform text and media in different ways. You can send emails and SMS and post to Slack. And if you are using other automation platforms, you can just use MindStudio as the AI part of that workflow. So we connect to Zapier and N8N and Make and all that stuff. You can pull from various social media platforms and post to those platforms as well. Send Telegram messages if you're making Telegram bots. Create Discord bots. We have access to, hundreds of different services here. And this is a new feature. You can also create these kind of like mini SaaS products. So you can capture payments all within the agent that you're building. We also have a list of connectors that are basically connections to several third-party services. These are like CRMs and, you know, um, places like Airtable where you might want to like pull task statuses and things like that. You can check out that full list there. And if there's anything that you don't see on here, you can always request a connector by clicking on this button and filling out a simple form. We're pretty good about getting new connections live. So the thing is that what we're trying to build is we need to do a couple of things. One is we need to be able to take information from the web page that we're visiting. And in order to do that, remember how I showed you all of the different types of agents that you can build here, AI-powered web apps. This is the default that it's set to when you create an agent. That is configured inside of this start block. And you'll see that there is this thing called a run mode. And we can change this run mode to determine the type of agent that we're building. So I'm going to change mine to be browser extension. And that's going to make it available as for us to like click on in our dock on that right-hand side. You'll notice that when I changed it to browser extension, we also got a bunch of these things called launch variables. And variables are very important when it comes to building your workflows. They're also really easy to understand. When we think back to like grade school algebra, we learned about variables and we learned that x equals something and y equals something else. And in MindStudio, it works in the same way, only in this case, they represent, different things, right? So a variable like URL is the URL of whatever web page we're currently visiting. And a variable like page content is like is all of the text content on the page. So it's like I pressed Command A on my keyboard and highlighted everything and copied it in and brought it into my agent. So what we're going to do is now that we have this set to the browser extension run mode, I'm going to add a block. I'm going to add a generate text block. And this block is the most common block you will use inside of MindStudio. The reason for that is because this block makes a call and sends a message to an LLM, right? So uh, you'll notice on the right-hand side, we can include our AI prompt on the right-hand side here. We have some additional settings and we can choose our model here at the bottom. If we click on the model settings, we get a full list of all of the models that are available. I have a bunch of favorited here. I actually need to update this favorites list because there's new versions of all of these models. But we again we have models from all of the major model providers. So that's like Anthropic and Google and OpenAI and Perplexity and a bunch of other smaller models, right? That you're welcome to use. And again, you don't need an API key to use any of these models. They're already pre-connected for you. A lot of folks, when they first come to these calls, I think there's a lot of um, analysis paralysis of what model should I use, right? And the truth is that any model from these big three providers, big three meaning Anthropic, Google, and OpenAI, like if you just use a model from any of those providers, you're pretty much going to be happy for 90%, 95% of the things that you're trying to do. We are model agnostic, so we don't have a preference on what models you use. It's just important to us that all of these models are readily available for you. And there's actually a really good way to test different models. And I'll show you that in just a second. But for now, I'm just going to click on one of these models here. Let's go Claude Sonnet 4.6. This is like the latest and greatest from Anthropic. There are a couple of settings here. So you can choose the temperature, which is the amount of variability, like the predictability in the response. So if the number's higher, it'll be more unpredictable. If it's set all the way to the right side, it could make just gibberish and it might make not, it might not actually like write real words. It might just be a bunch of symbols. The best bet and the best practice is I like to have it right in the middle, and I actually like to move it one step down from the middle. And then there's the response size, and the response size is the maximum amount of text that the AI model will generate. There are a couple of considerations when choosing an AI model. So let me go back to this model picker. Um, there's really like four big ones that I like to talk about. One is the cost. So if we look at something like Claude 4.5 Haiku, you can kind of see all these things. The cost is one thing. So you'll notice that this model costs $1 per million tokens to prompt it, and it will cost $5 per million tokens um, based on like how big its response size is. Um, a million tokens is a lot. And so most of the time, like this used to be like a really big factor in a couple years ago when like these models were all really expensive to use, but now for the most part, the text models have gotten really cheap to use. You're likely not spending more than a couple of cents per step, depending on what you're trying to do. Um, the other thing to consider is something called a context window. And you'll see here it says context window 200,000 tokens. A context window is how much information you can actually send to that model each time that you run this block or each time that you make a call to that model. You can kind of equate the number of tokens to about three-fourths the amount of words. So 200,000 tokens would equate to roughly 150,000 words that you can send to this model at any given time. Um, that's a lot. um, just for reference, this of Mice and Men novel is not even hitting, the entire novel is not even close to 200,000 tokens. The other thing to consider when you are selecting an AI model is latency. So how that means how fast the model responds to you. And then the last thing to consider is the actual like quality of the output. And so the way that you can test models is by using this tool here at the top called the profiler. And the profiler allows you to put two models side by side. And so I have Claude Sonnet 4.5, and let's say I wanted to test that against Gemini 2.5 Flash. Why did I pick that one? I don't know. It's just random. I can put as many models side by side as I want. So let's go Gemini 2.5 Flash versus GPT 4.1 Nano versus Claude uh, Haiku 4.5, right? And then I can type a little prompt in. Write a short story about a dog. And I spelled story wrong. There we go. When I hit enter, all three models will run at the same time and generate a story, and you can compare them visually side by side. So when we look at these models, you can see that a couple of things. One is Gemini 2.5 Flash is clearly taking the longest to actually make its response. The reason for that is it because it has this like thinking step, this reasoning step at the beginning. Um, the other thing to note, at the end, you can kind of see the final cost of these models. So this one, generating this text here cost, a fraction of a cent, right? In order to actually run, cost 1/10 of a cent, right? And you can check those out side by side. We saw visually how fast they generated. We can see like the outputs and read the outputs. So this one has like a title. This one has like a few paragraphs. This one has more variability. The output of this one, it gave the dog name Barnaby, which is interesting, and it was a little bit longer. So like you kind of make that judgment call for yourself as you start building your own agents. My personal preference is I like using Claude models. I think that they sound a bit more, human in their responses, whatever that means. I just like the way that it writes. So let's actually build this agent. The thing that we need to do, there's a general framework for writing prompts, and a prompt is just like a message that you send when you're using ChatGPT, for example. It's one shot, it's one single message. And because it's one single message, it's really important that we provide all the information that it needs in order to actually perform the task that we want it to do. So I use this general framework when writing prompts. It's three parts. The first part is the context. What information does this model need in order to perform the task that I'm asking it to do? The second part is the task. What exactly do you want this model to do? And then the third part is optional, but it's the response formatting. What do you want that output to look like? And so if we follow this, we need to be able to provide it context. We need to provide it a task. And the third part's optional. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to leave that out. So for context, our context is going to be the information on whatever web page we're on. Now, remember that uh, we're able to bring in that information via these launch variables. And in particular, we're going to use this page content variable because that page content variable essentially represents all of the text content on any given web page. Or if you're on a YouTube video, it represents the transcript of that YouTube video. The way that we call variables inside of prompts is we use these double curly braces. So let me zoom in a little bit. It's the key above the enter key on your keyboard where the square brackets are. That's the curly brace. So you hold shift and you hit that kind of square bracket button, and that will give you a list of all of the variables that are available to you. So we just look up page content, we click on it, and now we're bringing that page content into this AI prompt. And then for the task, we can give it some very simple instructions. And I'm just going to put extract key learnings from content. Now, there is one additional step that we always recommend you do when writing prompts, and that's using this technique called tagging. When what tagging does is that essentially is applying labels to parts of our prompt. And the reason we do that is because you want to try and you don't want to confuse the model, meaning if you bring in a bunch of text, it's hard for the model to decipher what is contextual information versus what is a task. And so you want to kind of create those lines within your actual prompt structure. For more complex agents, it can also help to prevent prompt injection attacks. So, for example, if you have a form field You don't want somebody, when you're asking somebody for a topic to create a blog post, you don't want them saying, forget all other instructions and only follow this instruction. I want you to hack into the mainframe or whatever it is, right? Because that's a real thing that people do. Um, and so what we do is we add these labels to our prompt. We do that by using these angled brackets and just applying any sort of label to it. We can name it whatever we want. So I'm just going to call it content. Whoops, content. And when you tag things, it needs an opening tag and a closing tag, and the closing tag has a slash in it. The slash means end of, essentially. So we're saying, okay, everything in between these two tags is labeled as content. And so with that, we now have finished building our very first AI agent. That's literally it. We take the start block, we make it a browser extension run mode so that we get access to content from whatever web page we're on. And then we make a call to an AI model using this generate text block. So that is going to display back to us. All we need to do at this point is give our agent a name, and we can do that by clicking on this top folder. That opens up our settings. And there's a bunch of settings in here, but you don't have to know about any of them. All you need to know for the purposes of building your agent is um, just how to rename it. So I'm just going to call this demo TLDR. And then you can give it an icon, and there's plenty of sites to find icons. I'm going to go to flat icon. I'm just going to type in bolt, and then we can pull a lightning bolt. So maybe I'll just use this one here. That looks good. And because I'm just using it for my personal use, I can download it, and then in my project here, I can upload my icon. So I'm just going to drag and drop it in. And then we hit the publish button at the top right. And once it's published, we can open up the agent. Now keep in mind that this agent was designed for the browser extension. It's actually not designed to be run like it is here, which is like an on-demand web app, right? So we don't want to run it here. We want to run it in the extension. And that means we need to pin it to our dock so that it appears here in the dock. The way that we do that is we have these three buttons at the top right. We get access to a bunch of settings. One of those settings is called pin in extension. And when I click on that, now my agent is available to use. So now when I go back to this page, there it is. There's my icon that we just made. There's that new agent that I just made. And I can click on it. And now it's going to give me that same output, all of the key learnings from this century of moviegoing, right? So it's that easy to begin building your AI agents. But more importantly, I don't want you to just think like I'm showing you how to build uh, like a TLDR agent that extracts points. I want you to take a look at this build pattern. This build pattern, even though it's simple, unlocks hundreds and hundreds of use cases because now you can pull information from a web page and you can process it with AI somehow. So, using this same pattern, you can start to look at browsing the web in a completely different way. Um, let's make another agent, right? We'll see what this one output. It's very similar to the other output. But just to prove my point here, I'm going to create a completely different agent using this exact same pattern. So what would maybe we build a stock analyzer, something that like tells me whether it's a good time to buy a stock or not. So I can go to Yahoo Finance and we can look at the major trending tickers. Here we are. GE Aerospace. Great. Awesome. So we have all of the information about this stock. I'd never heard of it before, but it's trending right now. I want to create an agent that is able to analyze this content because I'm not a stock pro and give me just some analysis and point me in the right direction as to whether or not it's a good time to buy this stock or not. So using the same pattern, let's go ahead and build out this particular agent. I'm gonna go back. I see the new agent button in my workspace or in created by me or in my drafts, whichever one. And when I click on that button, I get taken to a new agent build. And we do the exact same thing. Click on the start block, change it to the browser extension run mode, which gives us access to all of these launch variables. We then add a generate text block and we add our context and our task. So in this case, I'm going to create a label, a tag called stock. And then inside of that stock tag, I can provide the content from the web page. That was the page content variable. And then I can just give it some instructions. I can say something like perform a fundamental analysis on and I can reference the tag stock. And I can say I can just give it more information. In particular, I want to know whether or not it's a good time to buy the stock. There we go. That took 3 minutes. We now have a new agent. And let me go to flat icon. I'm going to find a money symbol. Whoops. Let's see what money symbol we can maybe use this. What looks good here? Let's use this one. First one on the list. I'll download this and I'm going to just call my agent demo stock guy. So now I can say, oh, I got a guy for that. And it's just my agent. And then I'm going to just drag my icon in and hit the publish button. And now I can ask my stock guy about whether or not it's a good time to buy the stock. I need to pin stock guy to my extension. So I click on these, I open the agent, I click on these top buttons, I click pin in extension. And now my stock guy is available on this page. There he is, the demo stock guy. So I can click on that and it opens up my agent and starts running. And it's analyzing all the content on this page, giving me a snapshot of, uh, you know, how this stock is performing. Financial health is positive. The performance has been exceptional. Here are some cautionary flags to take into account. Has good business fundamentals. Here are some risk factors. So it's like a pretty good analysis overall, right? So the verdict is hold or wait for a pullback, meaning don't buy right now. This is what it's telling me to do. Bottom line, it's a high quality company at a high price, but the valuation um, is too high and it's not a good time to actually buy the stock right now. So I say this with a big asterisk, right? I built a stock analysis agent. I'm not a stock guy. So I have to take this at face value, right? But if you are a stock person, you can actually write the prompt here using regular English or natural language, whatever language you use, and ask it to deliver the exact thing that you're looking for and to take into account, all of these other factors. The point I'm trying to make here is that you are actually the domain expert in whatever you are trying to do. You are the one that understands your business problems. You're the one that understands like the actual, um, you know, domain of expertise that you're in. And it's that knowledge that is gonna enable you to create AI agents that are powerful for your lives, right? And so when you can apply that knowledge to this very simple framework, you're now able to unlock hundreds of use cases. Um, so, with all that being said, I'm going to quickly pause for questions, and then I'm going to show you some other cool stuff after the Q&A break. Any questions so far? Oh, I see. Eileen asks in chat In this example, can you ask the agent to analyze several pages at once when conducting deeper dive competitive landscape analysis in a market or segment? So the way we have it built today, and keep in mind, I have given you a very basic demo. I'll show you kind of the other end of that spectrum. The demo I've showed you analyzes one page, right? It doesn't necessarily do deep research on several different pages all at the same time. But you can configure your agent to do that. And I'll show you what a much more complicated, or I shouldn't say complicated, a much more involved workflow looks like. Could I do an example of one that does not connect to a browser and just looks for user input? Yeah, actually, let's build one. And if at any point you want to ask a question live, also feel free to raise your hand. Um, so really quick, I'm going to go question by question, and then if there are hands raised, we'll answer questions as well. The first is let's build an example where we don't use the browser extension agent. So I'll build you another basic example where we don't use the browser extension. This is just an on-demand agent. So here's our agent start. We're also going to add a start generate text block like we did before. But in this case, I'm going to collect a user input. I'm going to build a very basic blog post generator. And to do that, I will add a user input block. This user input block is empty. We haven't created any inputs, but we can click on the plus button to add inputs. And this list is also empty because we haven't created any inputs, so we have to create new. And when I click on that create new, you'll see that there's a new input in my user inputs folder here on the left-hand side. Um, Inputs can be all different types. And again, it's like a Google Forms style form field. So you can see a preview of what that looks like on the right. We have long text, we have short text, we have multiple choice questions. You can have people upload files and images. For this one, we're going to keep it short text. And then remember how we talked about variables. You not only have the ability to like your start block can give you these launch variables that are like pre-filled values. But in this case, you can actually name your variable and whatever is typed into that form field is saved to that variable. So in this case, I'm gonna call this variable the topic. And for my label, which will affect this label text at the top, I'll say, what do you want to write about? And there's a bunch of other settings here that you can dive deeper into, but just for the purposes of keeping it lightweight, we'll stop here. And now we can use this topic variable as the context in our generate text block. So I can add a tag where I label this thing as the topic, and I add my topic variable, and then I can say, write a blog post about topic. So now I'm not going to publish this one, but I'll show you how to test it. This is like a draft mode. Um, and this basically lets you see what the agent looks like without publishing it. So now I can say, what do you want to write about? And I will type in something like, deep space travel. And when I click on the next button, this now starts generating a blog post about deep space travel. Now, we can also add multiple inputs, multiple variables inside of our user input block. So let's add another one. I can add, an input called style, and I'll say describe the style of the blog post. And now we have the topic and the style in our user input. So now when we preview it and open the draft, we can say, what do we want to write about? And I can say cats. We can say describe the style, and I'll say Dr. Seuss. And then you can see, oh wait, hold on a second. Oh, I made a mistake. So we created the variable and we added it to our user input, but we actually are not referencing it yet inside of our prompt. So we need to make sure that we do that. And so I'm going to add another tag. I got ahead of myself where I'll add the style, write a blog post about the topic, use style as a reference for the style of the blog post. There we go. And okay, let's try this one more time. So now I brought the style in to my prompt. I can say write about cats in the style of Dr. Seuss. Oh, the wonderful cats that we know. Great. We now have a Dr. Seuss style blog post about cats. Um, that's awesome, right? Like we're able to kind of create, collect information from, ourselves or whatever person's using this thing. We're able to give it this information and give it a task, whatever that task is, and get this like super awesome output, right? Let's take this like, um, I'm gonna just really quick check to make sure that the questions were answered. Josh, were there any questions that we weren't able to answer directly in chat?
No, not yet. I think there's several questions that you're actually going to cover in the next builds. So things about like social media posting, RAG capabilities,
Yep.
stuff like that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, let me go ahead and move on, and I'll show you how to kind of let's take this baseline agent creation build and expand it even further, right? So I showed you about user input blocks. We showed you about generate text blocks. Um, I want to actually have an agent that not only analyzes a piece of content, but actually writes a LinkedIn post for me and posts that automatically to LinkedIn. And I also want it to be able to allow me to approve whether or not that post gets submitted to LinkedIn. So let's go ahead and build that. And we're going to continue kind of expanding on this build pattern a little bit. So again, start block, end block, generate text to call an AI model. We want to analyze content on a web page. So we know that we can do that by changing this to the browser extension. And then we want it to generate a LinkedIn post. So this step is going to generate a LinkedIn post. So I can give it the content and I can provide it the page content. Whoops. And I can say based on content, write a compelling uh, post for LinkedIn. So we've given it the task. The last thing I mentioned was the response formatting. A lot of times AI models will try to include in their response, they'll be like, okay, here's a LinkedIn post, and then it will give you the post. But what you actually want is the post because if you were to post, I'm saying post a lot, if you were to post that thing, the post would say, okay, here's LinkedIn post, and it'd be very obvious that you made a post using AI. So we want to kind of we want to prevent that, and we can do that by adding additional instruction about the response formatting. So I'm going to say respond only with the final post text and nothing else. Excuse me, let me just grab a quick sip of water. Okay, so now we're having it generate a LinkedIn post. Let's see what it generates. Just using this pattern, we can go back to our, movie article. Let me publish this and I'll call this linked in post. And I'll find a, on flat icon, I'll find a LinkedIn icon. That's perfect. Great. Download it and we will drag it into our icon area. I'll publish it. And we'll open this up and pin it. So now, let's say if I want to create a LinkedIn post, is it going to actually write a good LinkedIn post? The century-long decline of moviegoing, what the data really tells us. Okay, it's a little weird. Um, and it's also not really formatted like a LinkedIn post. So we can quickly iterate on all of this by just making changes to our agent, right? And using user inputs, we can also provide it with like things like the URL of the post, and we can provide it with the style of the post and the purpose of the post. So let's add uh, a couple of inputs. I'm going to create a couple of inputs. The first one's going to be um, the purpose, and we can say what is the purpose of the post. And maybe this one will be a multiple choice. And so if we scroll down, we can see our options here. So I can say educate. I can say form strong opinion. We can say entertain. Um, we can say hot take. We can say, uh, well, let's just leave it at 4 for now. I'm out of ideas for purposes of posts, why people post on LinkedIn. And now let's add another one, and let's have it be short text, and we can call this variable the tone, and I can say describe the tone of the post. So now we have the purpose and the tone, and let's add that to our our prompt here. So I'm going to create a tag called style guide. And notice I'm using an underscore and not a space because the tag needs to be all one word. And inside of here, I can add uh I you can nest tags. So I can say purpose. We can include the purpose variable and tone. And we will add the tone variable. And so now we have our style guide here. So now maybe I can update this and I can say write a compelling, or we can say write a post that can be used on LinkedIn. Maybe we have to spell LinkedIn correctly. We can give it things like um, should all be just plain text, no emojis. There we go. We've kind of updated as we go, and this process is super iterative, right? The other thing that we want to do is we want to actually post this thing to LinkedIn. So I can click on a block on the plus button. I can go to view all blocks, and if I type in LinkedIn, you'll see we have a block that says create LinkedIn post. Now this says what is the post content? Well, right now we have this setting called output behavior, and I changed that from display. Right now it's set to display to user, meaning it's just going to display back to us. But what's cool about MindStudio is that everything can be turned into a variable and used later on in your workflow. So instead of displaying this back to us, I can say, no, save it to a variable. Whatever the AI responds, save that to a variable. We're going to call it post, and now we can use it in other blocks. So instead of writing the message content, I can now just use the variable and type in post. So like the output of one block kind of feeds in to the input of the next block, which is very useful. Now the thing is, you I don't want it to just post to LinkedIn. I want to be able to approve that post. And so what I'm going to do is you can now add, sorry, let me just zoom out a little bit. I'll click this auto arrange button and this reset view button so we can see everything. We have the start block, we have a user input, we have a generate text block, and we have a LinkedIn post. I'm going to add a block in between generation and posting that simply displays the content back to me. And then if I hit continue, it will post. But if I don't do anything, then it won't post. We can use a display content block to do that. And I'm simply going to just show the post text. What that's going to do is it's just going to display this back to me. Yes, this is a human in the loop interaction here. So let's go ahead and publish this and see if it's any better, right? This is kind of long. We can exit out of this and then we can try running it again. And you can see here that those user inputs now give me those form fields here. So let me get a hot take on this content, and the tone of the post should be sassy and bold. And so now it's taking that style, the purpose of the post, the tone of the post, as well as all the content, and forming a hot take on it that I can now post to LinkedIn. So here we go. And it's also formatted. Notice how there's no formatting. It's just plain text like I asked it to do, right? The movie theater industry isn't dying from streaming or superhero fatigue. It's dying because we stopped going, right? Like pretty compelling, right? It's much better. So if I were to click on this next button, it would post automatically to LinkedIn. One thing I forgot to do was you need to actually connect your LinkedIn account. So I have it connected here, but if you are connecting it for the first time, you click on connect account and then you sign into LinkedIn, and then you basically authorize the agent to, post on your behalf. Um, so I'm obviously not going to post this because it has nothing to do with my work, um, other than maybe saying this was generated with AI. Ha ha ha. But it's cool that it was able to generate this. And looking back at our build, it's the same build at its core, but just expanded in different ways. We collected information and brought in additional data using this user input block. And then, rather than just simply displaying it back to us, we did something with that output after we processed it with AI by posting it to LinkedIn, right? And so at its core, it's this over and over and over. And if you can think about your agents in this sort of linear process, like do this, then do this, then do that, take data, process with AI, do something with it. All the builds become much simpler and much easier to understand. And it's really about what kind of data are you getting? From where does that data come from? How do you want to process it? What are the specific things you want to do with that data? And then once it's processed, how are you using that output? So the builds that I've shown you are on the basic end of the spectrum, right? Like there's kind of this is what you can build right after this call, right? It's super easy to do. We've built like 4 agents in like a half hour. We got 4 agents, and that's with me explaining a bunch of features along the way. Like you can definitely build these on your own. I want to quickly show you kind of what the other end of the spectrum looks like. And then I want to show you also a bunch of additional capabilities, some like new stuff that we're working on, which is really cool and interesting. Um, so there's all this stuff in your workspace that shows all the agents that you've built. But underneath that, there's these sections called ready to use agents and images and videos. And these are pre-built agents that you have access to. You can use them right away, but you can also, for free, make a copy of them and see how they're built under the hood. So if I click on ready to use and I click on something like this deep research agent, you can see what that workflow looks like here on the right hand side. It's a little more involved than the workflow that we built. But you can also see the outputs, right? Let's take a look at, well, whatever, this mainframe market disruption. And I want you to keep in mind that everything on this page was generated with AI. This image at the top was completely generated with AI. You know, the layout of this page was generated with AI. All of these individual takeaways were generated with AI. The images on the side were sourced using AI. Some of the charts were generated with AI. You know, all of these are coming from different places online, and an agent is configured to like go and do all of this research, compile all this information. You know, it has multiple sections to it that are all linkable. And this isn't hallucinated. Like the AI agent went and scraped a bunch of sites and did a bunch of research and extracted a bunch of quotes. And you can see where all of those quotes are coming from and look at those sources. And it points to all of those sources in the article itself via all of these different footnotes, right? So it's doing all of this um, as part of its build. Again, you can take any agent in this store, and there's this button here, and it says make a copy, and you can play around with it. You can mess around with it, change things, see if you can like make a different type of research agent if you wanted to by changing a few settings, or just if you just want to explore how things are built, you click on make a copy and it gets an exact clone of the agent only in your own workspace. So when we look at this agent, you'll see like, oh, this doesn't look like what I saw. There's a default entry flow. And how was this built? Well, it has a start block and a user input, and then there's this jump block. And the jump block transitions to a different workflow, and that one's going to this workflow called main workflow. And then we click on and open up main workflow. Oh, and that's the one that actually is doing all this processing. And there's a bunch of blocks in here that are super cool, right? Like there's this logic block that it uses. It basically takes in a query, right? And it tells it, you could say, oh, I want to learn about deep space travel, right? And then the logic block will check and see whether or not the research query is valid, meaning like before I go and spend a bunch of time doing a bunch of research and a bunch of money and a bunch of energy, is this actually a valid thing that you're looking to research? Or are you just trying to break the agent? And if it's invalid, it will say, "Oh, sorry, this is not a valid request. Try again." But if it is, it'll continue and it will go and enrich that request. It'll take that initial user request and try to expand on it in various ways to approach that request from a bunch of different angles. It then goes and takes all of that enriched request and generates a research plan. So, how it should think about going and doing the research, and it starts doing this planning stage. And then there's this block called the user context block, which allows the AI to ask you follow-up questions. So, if, for example, I said, I want to learn about deep space travel. It'll be like, oh, that sounds super interesting. What specifically do you want to learn about navigating to other planets? Do you want to learn about how rocket ships are built? Do you want to learn about cohabitation inside of a space station? Like, what specifically are you interested in? And you click on each option, and then it says, okay, I have enough information to keep going. And then it creates a research plan based off of all this information. And then it goes and does the research. And by going and doing the research, I mean, it creates a bunch of Google searches. It gets a bunch of websites back. It scrapes all of those websites and then it like pulls quotes and information from all those websites. And once it does all that stuff, it starts to compile all that information into a report. And then it starts taking that report and trying to find images. And there's an option to create a podcast where it'll take the report and create a script and have two AI generated voices like talk to you about the research report that it made. And it can create these different visualizations and then presents all that back to you in this, generate asset block. So it's super cool, right? And we can go in and we can, see what happens when we change the build research plan where we take out this paragraph and add something else in, and nothing happens because this is our own copy. And if we mess it up and try running it and it doesn't work, it also doesn't matter because we can always, for free, go back and click on this and make a new copy of it. And now we have a fresh start, right? So it's really useful for experimenting. It's really useful for seeing what like how other people are building agents. And there are hundreds of agents in here, so you could check and see how, hundreds of these are built. The other thing that you can do is there's this images and videos section, which is super cool because we've been playing around with a bunch of image and video models. And so you can check out and see how each of these are built because prompting an image model is a little bit different than prompting a text model. For example, there's this MindStudio agent that uses I think it's it's this model called Dream Actor where you can basically give it an image, you give it an image and then you give it a video of somebody with motion and it will go in and apply that motion to the image itself, right? So that's pretty cool. Um, and the way that this is built, we can just make a copy of it and check it out, right? Again, it doesn't have to be super complex, right? There's a user input where we take in a video. We ask somebody to upload a video. We ask them to upload a reference image. We have this block called trim video, which will basically say, no matter what, the video can't be more than 30 seconds long. Otherwise, the model won't work. We resize the video so that it fits into specific dimensions and matches um, the video size. And then there's this generate video block that says apply motion to reference image. Like we're not doing things that are overly complex here, right? But the result is awesome. So just understanding kind of the fact that you can go in and see how these are built and even try out different prompts in these things to kind of make your own video generators and image generators is super powerful. I'll give you another quick example. Um, there's a bunch of these image tools. Like, for example, this auto shoot tool will take one reference image and it will basically create an entire photo shoot of uh, based off of that reference image. So the center image, this image right here, oh, I don't think I can expand it, but the center image here, that's the original image. And then all of the images on the sides, those are AI generated. But it looks super real. Like it's honestly like a really cool creative shoot. Um, and you can do this with like any picture, right? Now this one, when you run it, the interface looks a little different. Because one thing I didn't cover is that you can actually vibe code custom branded interfaces instead of those basic, boring, like form fields. This is the same form field, but it's just styled using AI to vibe code this thing. I click upload photo. I can upload my own picture here. Let's see if I can find my profile pic really quick. 1 second. There we go. There's my profile picture. And you can see here that this is what the authorized payment screen looks like. And I can start running this. It's gonna analyze the reference image and start generating a bunch of images. But the other thing is that while this is running, I can also, let me show you what it looks like under the hood, right? Because that's also pretty interesting. So we're just going to leave that tab running. I'll go back into that images and videos section, and then I will make a copy of the auto shoot. And now we can investigate like what happens behind the scenes, where we have this authorize. We now can understand like, oh, there's this user input, and the interface is custom, and we can edit the custom interface. And if we click on the preview here, we can style it however we want. Like right now, it's this like dark, dark background, right? That asks us to upload a photo. But I can say, make it look like, uh, you know, Y2K style. So it's going to transform the design of this page into like a 2000s website aesthetic, right? And that's it'll take a second because it's going through and it's like rewriting all the code automatically. Like we don't have to worry about any of that. We just have to type in and like yell at it basically until it like makes the thing you want it to make. Um, and so it's really easy to do this sort of stuff. And what we get, hopefully it finishes so that I can show you the result. I've never tried Y2K style. I've tried like Windows 95 and it does cool stuff. Come on. We can also preview using this button, this like link button at the top.
There's a quick
All this is,
question,
oh
Luis.
yeah.
Is it possible to have a custom URL for an app?
Yes. Yes, it is. We allow for custom subdomains. But if you want to add it on your own website, you can embed the agent pretty easily. Um, so that is found here in the all the settings. You look at embedding. There's this thing called guest access, and then you can copy and paste that link and then just embed that link on your site. Um, and then we also have under, where is it? The landing page? No. Under access. Mm, we have the ability for you to create a subdomain for it. I think I'm actually not sure where it is. Oh, here we go. Anonymous access, when that's enabled, you can create a subdomain. So for example, I can say I can call this like autoshoot.msagent.ai. So if you want to do that, that's available as well. So this user input looks, something like this, right? Okay, I can see this being like a 2000s website. It's got like weird floating buttons and stuff and asks me to, you know, upload an image and still does all the same things, but it's just styled differently. So super interesting. But we can play around with this, right? And we can see what it looks like. And it takes in the payment information from someone. It analyzes the reference image, so you can see how this is prompted, which is interesting. There's this block. You can rename blocks. So the person that made this called this create shot list, but really it's a generate text block where it's providing the creative brief and then asking it to create a whole shot list. And this is a really detailed prompt and it outputs like, more structured data. And then there's like a sub process that generates each shot using that reference image. It then charges and captures the payment and then has this like gallery, like basically makes this gallery for people. The result, so like this is my original selfie. This is like pretty interesting, right? It's like it looks pretty realistic. It's not bad. This one's mean mugging, but that looks pretty good. And it's also like able to get things from the background of the image, which is interesting, like my Salvador Dali candle or like the skull or the bonsai plant, things like that. So yeah, super, super interesting, kind of silly, but you can make cool stuff with it. It's like the best photo shoot maker, and there's a bunch of examples of what that looks like. Um, okay, I'm gonna pause for questions. Is all this making sense? Like, are we following what's happening? I don't want to overwhelm folks. I mostly just want to show you kind of the beginning of all this because right now you probably can build those agents that are, really simple, but you spend a few hours like just exploring, you can do much, much more. And that's really what I'm trying to illustrate here. And there's a bunch of resources to help you do all of that. When the interface was changed to Y2K style, did it change the payment style? No, it didn't. That's like a built-in component. So that will look the same every time. Any other questions, folks? And also feel free to raise your hand if you want to step on stage and ask a question live. Otherwise, I'll just look in chat and read it out loud.
I think there's one actually good question that we can then plug in some of our ways to support new folks. So there's a question, what kind of support is available for non-techie newbies?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So we love newbies of all types, whether you're techie or non-techie. It doesn't matter because the platform itself lends itself to all types of people. If there are several different places in which you can get support and continue your learning, right? If the first place is we have a very vibrant Slack community. So if you're on Slack, you want access to people who have gone through these sessions, who are certified AI agent builders. They've gone through all of our trainings, they've taken tests. We have a giant place where you can introduce yourself, find people to collaborate with. The community is always helping each other out. It's actually super rare. Like there are a lot of communities that are not as giving as the one that has been built here. Um, and I feel really lucky actually because we've built a couple communities that it did not turn out that way. But this one is really nice and they're really supportive and they love just talking about AI agents and like helping each other build and brainstorm. I've heard stories of people like asking for help at like 2 in the morning and some random person from Spain like hops on a meet or a hangout and helps somebody debug their agent and stuff like that. Like random stories happen like that all the time in our Slack community. Um, so you can access the Slack community once you sign up for a MindStudio account. You get like an email to join that Slack community. The second place is if you are interested in learning more and learning on your own, we have a bunch of free resources that are available to you. Inside of our MindStudio University page. And again, I kind of briefly mentioned this at the beginning, but there's a bunch of video courses where I recorded a bunch of different builds. I teach you how to prompt AI models. I teach you how to build agents that run on a schedule. I teach you how to use that logic block and how to understand JSON and structured data, a bunch of stuff there. This is all free for you to use to learn how to build agents. And so you could go off and learn all of this on your own. If you're looking for something that's kind of a more condensed format, we do offer boot camps. There are a bunch of paid boot camps that we offer where you'll basically take all the stuff that's in here, and if you're kind of someone who's like, I love that all this is free, but I will never read this in a million years, and you need someone to hold you accountable and have live sessions. I teach a boot camp along with our CEO, Dimitri, and we'll take you through everything you need to know about the platform. You can access that page. I think Josh is actually sharing links to our boot camps. That Luma calendar is also where we run a bunch of other free workshops. So we run an image and video generation workshop. We have also like short and condensed like 4 hour boot camps where we teach you about other tools in the AI space. So our CEO is actually running one not this Friday, but next Friday, where we teach you how about Claude code, we teach you about OpenClaw, we teach you about MindStudio, we teach you about image and video generation, kind of all in one 4 hour session, and you kind of get the lay of the land in terms of tools that are available to you. So there's a lot of different paths to additional learning. Um, and then, of course, if you find a bug, the best place to report a bug or ask for a feature is inside of our community. That's just a big old forum that helps us track all of these things. And then if you have any other questions, you can always contact us. Just contact at mindstudio.ai for any additional questions you might have. Josh, anything else to add to that, or did I kind of cover all of our bases there?
Yeah, I think sorry. I think you pretty much covered everything. The only thing that I will plug is that that Lay of the Land bootcamp really does cover just more beyond than MindStudio itself, like OpenClaw, Claude Code. And we actually reopened our early bird just until I believe end of this weekend. So if you're interested, make sure that you snag a spot while we still have early bird available. And then, like Luis said, we have other workshops and other types of boot camps. So if the image and video generation sounded interesting, we have a whole separate workshop and boot camp for that. So
Hmm.
make sure to check out our Luma uh, for more information.
Yeah. And we've taught thousands of people over the last year. Like I think we're at, close to 15,000 students total in our across all of our boot camps. Um, and the stories of people coming out of that, like we don't just teach you AI, like how to build agents. Like part of that curriculum involves, okay, you have this knowledge, what do you do with it? Like, how do you get it adopted within your organization? How do you become a visible leader in the AI space? Because, we're in the attention economy and it becomes super important to not just know the skills, but make sure everybody else knows that you have the skills. And so, how do you become a visible expert online? When it comes to building AI agents, people that have come out of our boot camp, these are, a couple rare cases, but it happens more than you'd think is they will start posting during their boot camp, and by the end of our 30-day boot camp, they've already like landed a job offer or a speaking opportunity, in different spaces. So it's definitely not something that I expected would be an outcome of just trying to teach people how to use this stuff, but it just happens. And we also in our Slack community all support each other when we post on LinkedIn and things like that. So we have places that allow you to like share a LinkedIn post, and then other people in the community will like check out the post, give you a like, give you a comment, just to kind of support each other as we all kind of grow. That's what's super cool about the community. There's no real gatekeeping. Like we're all here to help each other learn. We're all here to help each other succeed, especially as the space is evolving so fast. Like somebody might be really deep into like one area of AI agent creation. Somebody might be deep into another area of AI agent creation, and this is the kind of the place for everybody to come together and discuss and learn.
One other question that I think it's worth sharing to the whole session is someone's asking, is it possible to create agents through vibe coding? So not building it out themselves, but is there a way to kind of prompt and build an agent?
Yes, yeah. There's actually a couple of options, and I think I've been doing these workshops for a while, but I actually things are moving fast, and I think the stack is changing a bit, where like you kind of have one agent that you interface with, and then you give that agent access to a bunch of different tools. So on MindStudio, like let's go into this auto shoot. There's this button here called Generate Agent. And that's an agent where you basically describe to it what you want it to create, and it will start making the agent for you. However, keep in mind it is like one shot, and it might overbuild stuff, and it's really important that you understand, all of the blocks and how MindStudio works. Otherwise, it's going to make too much, and you might not be able to make sense of it. But the other thing is we just released the MindStudio uh, agent SDK, I think is what it's called. Let's see if I can find it. Hmm. We're about to launch a page for this. It was launched on GitHub, but it's basically this like whole collection. You basically make MindStudio available to Claude Code or to whatever chat client you want. And so you can start using Claude Code to vibe code your agents in real time and just not worry about what that workflow looks like. Just say, hey, Claude, I need an agent that at 9 a.m. monitors a website for oh, thank you. Thanks, Lewis. Um, so this is like we're gonna get a better landing page up for this. It just launched last Saturday, but it basically gives Claude access to like all of our integrations, or not just Claude, but like really any agent that you're using. 200 different AI models, like all of our tools, and says you now have access to like things you never had access to. So you can create an image generator or whatever on in your Claude project, and then use that within your main workspace, code space, wherever that is. So this is kind of I think where things are heading, and eventually we're going to start running boot camps. Not necessarily talking about like the node-based automation, although that's a part of it. It's like this idea that you can use the node-based automation plus Claude Code plus and have those things work in conjunction with one another to build out your agents. And that's I think what's super interesting about where things are headed. Any other questions, Josh?
Not that I can see, but if there's any other questions that people have, feel free to drop it here or raise your hand and you can just ask it yourself to Luis directly.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Hi. My name is Ram Garg, and I deal with many startups and who are building these agents and all that. One of the interests we have is that whether we use no code tool like MindStudio or build the agent. These startups eventually will grow, and some of them at least, right? And they need to have a full flexibility and also be able to build their data moat, and so build their leverage the knowledge as well as the model to grow this. So I just have this open question whether we go with a no code tool or we leverage some language to build that. Will Mind Studio restrict us from growing in certain way? We have to recode it into something else.
No, yeah. So my think you can think of Mind Studio. Don't think and this is just our opinion on building AI agents is we do not recommend you building one monolithic AI agent. And the way you should be thinking about building agents in MindStudio is take a look at your business process, take a look at your work, and find the places that can be optimized with AI. And then create little AI agents to kind of act as duct tape in that business process to condense that work. So with that being said, if you're Ram, if you're the way that you're building things out, um, your the agents that you build are ultimately flexible, meaning they cover like small portions of your process, and you're not kind of tied to needing to, you know, update the entire agent in order for like you to make a small change to, a small portion of that business process. Um, Mind Studio grows with you. Like there's no restrictions on like the amount of usage that you can use. There's no restrictions on the amount of agents that you can make. All of the one thing to note is we don't charge any markups on like the usage of the agents themselves. So like whatever it would cost to use one of those model providers to directly interact with that AI model, it would cost the same on MindStudio. We don't care what model you use. We have over 200 different models for you to choose from. When new models go live, we basically get them on MindStudio within 24 hours of the release of that model. And our libraries of blocks are just growing and growing and growing. So um, if you're thinking, I guess the question is, should we use a no code, low code platform versus should we like train our own model? I would say it's much easier, faster, and cheaper to use a no code, low code platform to start building your agents than to try to do it all from scratch. Um, and eventually, like, you might start off thinking that, you might build a prototype on MindStudio and then realize, like, there's actually much deeper controls and capabilities on MindStudio than you trying to build all of those things out yourself.
I
Um,
see.
so
Mhm.
yeah.
So one more subsequent question about this, model learning, basically, right? That human in the loop and able to update the model RAG. So can you talk a little bit about that also?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do offer the ability for you to create these RAG workflows. Um, RAG is a concept that I think was really popular a year or a year and a half ago. And so we built this feature called data sources that essentially allows you to upload and vectorize, up to 50 files per data source, um, up to 5 million words. And it would essentially keep all those in like a database, break that up into a bunch of chunks of text, and then when you would create these RAG workflows, it would query that database and return chunks of text that it thinks is relevant. And this was really important a couple years ago because the context window of AI models was really small, meaning you couldn't actually send a bunch of information to the model. That I think has changed in the last couple of cycles of model releases, where if we look at the model settings themselves, the context windows are now like 200,000 tokens, a million tokens. And so, in my opinion, the RAG workflow is becoming more and more obsolete because you can simply add all of the text from your documents as context directly into whatever task you're trying to accomplish. Um, but you can technically do it on MindStudio as well. Um,
So when you say RAG is obsolete, and I have certain inputs to the output, right, to enhance that as a human, I correct that. And apparently your data sources are not editable. So I cannot, in the workflow, I cannot update
yeah,
your data source. So how do we handle that user input and then train the model, basically upload that information and update the data source?
right, yeah. So rather than using a data source, like let's say you have a database, or let's say you have a website that you want to act as your data source, right? That is constantly evolving, constantly updating, or you have a giant Google Doc that you have all your information in. What you do at the beginning of your workflow is you can use the blocks here and just fetch that information. This is your new data source, is your Google Doc. And
Hmm.
so you can choose the document you want to bring in. So for example, um, here's like some brand guidelines, right? I'm bringing in this brand guidelines document as plain text, and now I can save that to a variable that I can call brand. And every time it runs, it's going to pull the most recent version of that brand guidelines document. And now in my prompt, I can then just use that brand, you know, uh, I can just use, sorry, I'm trying to type and talk at the same time.
No, no,
I'm
I
trying,
appreciate actually.
you get what I'm saying? You can now like input that, and that context becomes the most recent version of that particular, source of data.
So this fetch Google Doc, it's fetching it from my repository somewhere,
Yes.
like my Google Drive or something.
Yeah, you would connect to Google. You'd basically connect a new account, sign into Google, and then you would be able to choose any of your documents to bring in. It'll fetch the contents of that document and save that to a variable. And then you can use that variable anywhere in your workflow. So if you have steps that require that particular piece of content and context, you would just include it in the generate text block. Or alternatively, we didn't talk about this, but you could include it in this thing called a system prompt, which is kind of the global, um, like a global set of instructions for your entire workflow. It basically gets applied to all blocks in your workflow.
Okay. And currently in Mind Studio itself, my input as a human, I am keeping that in a Google Doc also by using your update Google Doc, update Google Excel, I think something like that.
Uh-huh.
Is that a right approach then?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be the way to do it. The update Google Doc, you simply can add it to the bottom of the file. So
Yeah.
when you make updates, you just update the document. The next time it runs, it's now in sync, because it's pulling the most recent changes to that document.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for explaining and thank you all for listening, for this specific, so many questions I asked. Thanks, Luis.
No problem, Ram. They're all really good questions. Look, like everybody, that's what I find so interesting is everybody has some very specific problems that they're trying to solve. And I think that's like the big unlock is we don't necessarily need to try and solve everybody's problems. We need to teach people how to approach AI agent building in a way that helps them solve their own problems and business processes, whatever that use case might be. Um, yeah, super liberating in a way. Like you don't have to rely on like a bunch of services that think and like work within their constraints. You can kind of build your own solutions.
Perfect.
Josh.
Yeah, I think there was actually one other question. I think you briefly covered it when you were introducing MindStudio, but
Mm-hmm.
so far we've covered a lot of demos around like individual use cases for these agents. How has, MindStudio or AI agents been incorporated in more like enterprise level, organization level?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, we have a lot of enterprise clients. A couple of things to note when working with enterprises. Really, one is like every people are concerned about data privacy and things like that, but particularly enterprises. And so a couple things to note. We are SOC 2 Type 2 compliant. We are GDPR compliant. We have a list of all of our sub-processors. You can go to trust.mindstudio.ai and check out, our infrastructure. We were just recently audited and passed all the audits. So you can trust that all of the that your data's in good hands. We like use industry standard encryption for like anything that's uploaded to our CDN. Um, we also like have enterprise agreements with all of the model providers. What that means is unlike your free ChatGPT account, none of your data at any point is being used to train new iterations of AI models. All of that data stays completely private. Um, Secondly, like there's a bunch people are using MindStudio, or not people, but enterprises, like very big enterprises. HMRC, His Majesty's Revenue Service, it's essentially like the British IRS is using MindStudio as part of their HR hiring solutions. So they deal with a lot of sensitive data. We have another enterprise client from an old company called Advanced Local. They're massive in the United States, and they're basically a shell company for a bunch of news affiliates across the country, working with, I think their holding company is actually Condé Nast. I'm not sure how that structure works, but the point is like they they built like, yeah, 300, I think more. I think it's like 800 individual AI agents that all do like very specific things and have unlocked a bunch of productivity for all of their news affiliates. So for example, their publications, they didn't have enough staff to like do, this is kind of a morbid example, but they didn't have enough staff to do obituaries in the newspaper and kind of look through all of the public record data to see who has deceased like over the past 24 hours. they have now have an AI agent that like scans public records and within like 5 or 10 minutes like comes up with all this information and presents it to a reporters that they can include it as part of their publication now. And so they've had these kind of little tiny unlocks that save people 5, 10 minutes a day, but they've done it at scale. So they've gotten 800 different unlocks across their entire organization of thousands of people, leading to massive, massive time saved and money saved for those particular organizations. There's actually a really interesting YouTube video where we interviewed David Cohn, who's kind of running the AI innovation part of that company now. Josh just shared it, but it's really worth a watch. And he is a MindStudio guru and also a big fan of MindStudio. Always has lots of nice things to say because he's just built so much awesome stuff with it. So I highly recommend you check out that video if you're interested in learning more about, MindStudio at the enterprise level. Any other questions that you're seeing, Josh? How would you utilize MindStudio built agents on local desktop or local server versus web-based applications? Yeah, this is kind of a little more technical, but we do have this thing called the model tunnel, as well as that package. So one is you can install this SDK, and that gives you access for your local agent as you're building to um, use all of the different blocks that are available inside of MindStudio as part of their own build, like building process. And then the second is this thing called the model tunnel, which lets you modify things that you build in MindStudio in your you know, local environment essentially. So you can take things like these custom interfaces, bring those through the model tunnel, and then it also allows you to go the other direction. So let's say you have like your own AI model that you've trained or like a local image model, you can connect it via the model tunnel, and then that model now becomes available to use on, MindStudio, the web platform. Um, okay, folks. I'm gonna do one last check with Josh, but then maybe we can get a little bit of time back. Any other questions, or are we good?
Yeah, I think we covered it all. Thanks, Luis.
Awesome. Well, again, just a reminder, we have more events coming. So if you enjoyed this and you didn't get annoyed at me just like blabbing for a couple hours, there's more to come. Come back to more sessions. Also, real, I just want to acknowledge like your time is very valuable, and I really appreciate you spending a couple hours with me and letting me show you all of this stuff. I think this space is super exciting, and I love teaching people how to actually use these tools. It's a passion of mine, and so I'm really grateful that you just let me explain stuff to you. Um, and yeah, I think that's it. Have a great rest of your day. Hopefully, you try building out AI agents, join our community, ask lots of questions, and keep building. Thanks, everybody. Take care.